You are listening to What's Next? Conversations with Boomers, and I'm Barb Demaray, your host. Now, recently we had a very heartbreaking story of betrayal that was told by Jackie Adams, and it was her story. And she told it so eloquently. And now, at the end of that episode, we did touch on a healing process. So today we want to expand on what Jackie went through to heal, and as a mental health therapist, what she would suggest to other people. And we also want to talk about other forms of betrayal, because betrayal from a partner is one form, but we also have betrayals from friends, from family members. It happens all the time. So, welcome back, Jackie.
Thanks, Barb. Thanks for having me.
We're just so glad to have you. And as I told you, the last episode, we're getting lots of interest. So this will be just as good. Okay, why don't we start by sort of adding on a little bit to the betrayal piece. So we talked about your story of betrayal. And so tell us what are other ways that we can be betrayed?
Okay. What I want to look at too is that, yes, we can be betrayed by friends, family members. How often you hear that family members just kind of do some sad things to each other and it sort of ends that relationship, right? So I feel like we have to look at things like when betrayal is really impactful, right? It's very hurtful. Whatever happens, we have things that occur like the feelings of rejection, feelings of heartbreak, experiencing some PTSD. And those things are the things that we have to really look at. How do we move forward from any of that? And that's where I think we need to start today.
We've had a few episodes on grief. And lots of times people say that, there's stages of grief. There's sort of a step-by-step process. But my friend Denise, who comes on, who's an expert, says it really doesn't work that way. It's not linear. So would you say the betrayal and getting over that, it's the same thing? You go through different stages and it goes in and out.
Yes. So there's a grieving process for sure. It's a loss, right? However we look at that, it's a loss. And how do people grieve? In various ways, right? Some people become really, really angry. There are all those, as you just mentioned, stages of grief. Nobody goes through them in any kind of order, and no one goes through all of them. Some people are very angry. Some people are just always really sad. Some people stop eating, start eating. The whole stress situation. They don't want to get out of bed. Depression sets in. And, so there's lots of different parts of grief, and not everybody experiences it the same way by any means.
Well, exactly. As you say, getting over a betrayal or working through a betrayal is a grief thing. It's the person hasn't died, but your world has been shattered.
Yeah, and it's a big loss. The thing is, we have to start to look at what are we saying to ourselves, right? How are we going to move forward from that? What are we telling ourselves? Are we telling ourselves like, this was all my fault? I deserved this. All those kind of negative self-talk. And we don't want that to happen. And if you can help it, it should not happen, right? But we don't like to use the word should. Everybody does differently. But then you have to start to challenge those thoughts, okay? And how do you want to live out your life after betrayal? And that's a huge question.
Say it's betrayal from a family member. What would you consider to be the healthiest approach towards healing?
I think toward any healing, we have to first look at ourselves. What do we believe in? What are our morals? What are our values? What's been broken? Because a lot of times betrayal has a lot to do with breaking things that we've always believed in. Our values, our morals, whatever that was for us, right? And that really is a part of betrayal. So that could come from a family member for sure. So once that happens, I think it's the same process, no matter what the betrayal is. It's a process where we have to start to really believe in ourselves, understand what we just went through, and try and move forward by changing a lot. And that means changing things within our environment, friendships, some depending, right? Friendships, therapy. And therapy doesn't always come that quick. I mean, it's again, a process, a journey. This whole thing is a journey because now you are looking at yourself in a different light. And when it comes to marriage or when it comes to a family member, sometimes you feel like, okay, so now I'm on my own.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those people, whoever they were, either you no longer want to associate with them, or in some cases, it's the opposite way around, sadly, right? So then it's still the loss, right? And you have to understand, how am I going to move forward? What's important to me? And what are my triggers, right? Triggers are another enormous thing. So that's why I say changing your environment. It's almost like an addiction, right? Where addicts have to change their people, places, and things, right? We're changing who we're associating with. We're changing what we're doing. I mean, in my case, I moved many, many miles away because I came home. And that
After a year, I remember you saying.
After a year of, well, it was the process of our divorce. So yes, it was a year. And then I moved home and it felt good. That was comforting for me. But where I moved to, I didn't know a soul. It was a different part of New Jersey. I really started all over again. And for me, that felt good. For other people, may not, right, feel good. It was a new start. It was fresh. Everything was different. Did I still have some triggers? Of course. If I heard music or I saw something or, you know, things, I still had things that belonged to me, that belonged to us in my home. Or it was a trip and we had something, right? So yeah, so changing everything and beginning to understand who you are and who you want to be and who you lost. Because a lot of times we lose ourselves in those relationships.
Right. As well, when, you know, in a marital situation or in a partnership, you are betrayed. We often go through, this isn't this isn't the person I thought that I was married to or partnered with. And I'm sure it's the same when you're betrayed by a family member. This is not how I would have expected that person to respond. I mean, this is just like a complete shock. And people can surprise you. It's sort of, you know, you think you know somebody after, you know, decades, but lots of times you don't.
No. Yes.
Yeah. So when you say self-talk, what does that look like?
It looks like positive thinking. I think that's the best way I can describe it. It's positive thinking. It's changing and challenging what we're telling ourselves that's negative, which is what I started to say earlier. Like, we're telling ourselves, was it our fault? We're questioning everything about who we are, what has happened. And now what? Did I become some big loser? Well, I mean, people tell themselves that. And in fact, it's about saying, okay, I can grieve, but I can move forward and I can be very, very positive. So what do we have to do to start to rewire our brains? And the way we do this, and it's been said, it's been a theory, it's been proven over and over and over again. The more positive you can tell yourself, that positive self-talk, journaling, gratefulness, taking care of yourself, even in a physical way, right? Making sure that you're getting out, that you're physically exercising, the things that make us feel better every day. And you do it over and over and over again, especially the writing, especially the positive thoughts. Happiness is always going to be a choice. We can wake up in the morning and say, we're going to be happy today. And that's a challenge. When you're feeling not so good about yourself, about what just happened, about the betrayal, having flashbacks, all of those things. And now I'm saying, okay, I'm getting up. I'm going to be happy today. And it actually does work. As funny as that may sound to people.
I know it does. I know it works.
It works.
Yeah.
And so when I talk about positive self-talk, that's it. I mean, even if I'm telling myself something negative and just kind of say, okay, I'm putting that out of my head. I'm going to be happy today. I'm not dwelling on this. This isn't a part of who I want to be any longer.
Mm-hmm.
And you just do it. And again, it's getting out of your house. It's getting out of yourself. It's putting one foot in front of the other. For some people, it becomes really important to volunteer, right? Just go help other people. And that always brings
That can be very
sense.
healing to get out of yourself is to help other people and
Okay.
and find ways to do that. One question I have is, okay, in a marital situation or in a partnership situation, usually that betrayal leads to separation and divorce.
Yes.
But in a friendship or in a relationship with a family member, do you not, first of all, try and go through a process of reconciliation?
Yes. And I will tell you, as a therapist, I use two words and I do it over and over again: conversation and resolution. The resolution doesn't have to be one way or the other, right? It can be a compromise, it can be an understanding. The problem that lies therein, because I've been in similar situations, nobody wants to have the conversation because those are hard conversations to have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So nobody wants a conversation. And they're all like, nope, it's okay. I'm fine. It's good. We can just leave it alone. Leave it like this. We're okay.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what many, many people do. Nobody wants conflict. You can't show me anybody who likes conflict, right? So when we talk about conversation, what's the first thing that we put in our heads? Oh, this is going to be a conflict. We're going to argue. It's not going to be good. And
We
that's
avoid difficult conversations at all costs. Absolutely.
all the time. And so the thing is, if you can get to a level of conversation, you can probably find some resolution, but oftentimes the other person involved closes that gate. They just are not doing it. So it's a struggle.
And then it's a process of acceptance, I guess. Okay.
Yes.
Certainly by the time people get to our age, we have been betrayed by somebody. And it's very difficult because it's a loss, and any kind of loss, as you say, requires a process of grieving. So it's now what are the parallels with betrayal from platonic type relationships, and those are our friendships, our family members, versus a romantic relationship? What would you say the parallels are in the process of getting through it?
Right. Because basically the parallels to begin with are the fact that you're hurt, the fact that you feel rejection 9 times out of 10, right? It's like they did something, whoever that is, that was really not in line with anything you felt you had in that relationship. Even if it was just a friendship, right? You felt like you had some kind of a truthful, honest friendship. And then suddenly you find out that's not true. Something happened. So, I mean, that's where the parallels of hurt are, right? So the parallels of healing are going to be, again, very similar. As has always been told, there are things in life that everybody needs, right? They need a purpose, absolutely a purpose. And I remember years and years ago, my poor dad, as he was aging, he felt like he lost his purpose. He would tell me that people came to me for such and such, and now they don't anymore. So I feel like I don't have a sense of purpose. And I think older people do go through that a lot. And that's why living in communities are so important. So sense of purpose, a sense of community, faith is really important. Taking care of your health, all your own health needs, physically, emotional wellness, really important. And that's where a lot of therapy comes in, right? Or groups, support groups. There's all kinds of support out there if you can tap into it. People are afraid. I understand. Nobody wants to step into something new for the first time. But believe me, when you do, the result is really a positive one. I've never, in my whole practice, I've either had people who said, I'm absolutely not doing it, and they don't. I've had people that wavered and they will go. And when they come out of that, once they stepped foot in, they come back and they're like, best thing I ever did. So those are the things you have to start to look for, things that, again, you weren't doing before, which also makes it difficult, right? Those things were never a part of your life. You were living your life. Your purpose was And I'll go back to with a spouse or a partner and a family. I remember this very clearly. I felt like I lost my sense of purpose. My kids had grown, and now my husband and I are divorcing. I'm living alone, and all the things I always enjoyed because I was really, to admit, very domestic. I had a job and I was involved in sports, but I mean, I was the person who loved to come home and cook for her family all and do whatever they needed, right? That was a big part of my purpose. So I had to repurpose myself. What am I going to do now?
That's a really good point.
Yeah. It's the same thing with a friendship or like a relative that you hang out with a lot, like that you were together or you traveled or you did whatever it was you did. Suddenly that's gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and these things are part of life, and as I say, virtually all of us have gone through some form of it, which is painful and requires, a process of healing, and may or may not require reconciliation, which can be very hard.
Uh-huh.
And I would say probably most of the time it doesn't amount to anything, because it has to require both people wanting to sit down and have a mature, honest, open conversation. And that might sound easy, but it is not.
No, and again, and you used the word earlier, acceptance, and I so believe in that. I mean, then you just have to accept where am I at, and I have a lot of times you just have no choice but to accept it, right? Because like you just said, the person doesn't want to have that conversation. Okay. And you might believe that if I had the conversation, things could get better.
Mm-hmm.
But when they close the door, you can't force it open.
That's right. A conversation requires two people. And if it's only one person that is willing to engage in the conversation, it's just not going to work.
Uh-huh.
So, getting back to you and your situation of betrayal and healing, and because you've mentioned, getting involved with a group of people, did you do that initially?
Did I do that initially? I didn't do much of anything initially, I have to say. I was so involved at the time. So my timeline was I got the voicemail that he didn't want to be married anymore. That was March. April, he was out of the house. April, I made arrangements to leave and go live at the beach from June to September, up here in New Jersey, which was my haven, which I did do. And I carried on my practice over the phone. And
Mm-hmm.
my clients were fine with it. So we had our sessions, did what I had to do. In the meantime, prior to my leaving, which I left, in June to come up here, prior to my leaving, I already had set up a new condo for myself, and I was going to come home and move to that condo. So I had so much going on. And when I came up to the beach for the summer, I also had a lot of family and friends up here. And being at the ocean for me is healing to begin with. So even though I had my breakdowns, I went through it all, it was very calming and it felt good, right? So then I knew I was going to go home and move out of my house, which I had already made peace with. And when I got home, my girlfriend had set up an entire group of women who came in and literally packed me up. And every time
Oh,
I said, I'm not sure if I want to take that, they're like, you're taking it. You're taking it. We're moving. We're doing it. So they were really good. And then I had my movers and everything. So I was very busy, right? So now you figure that's September. Now, of course, the holidays are coming and my kids are surrounding me. They're coming in. They're all over. And again, I was in a place where I had all these friends that I had raised my children with. So I felt very supported. So no, did I go to a group? No. Did I initially find a therapist? Again, my answer is no. And if I did, I have to say, I had a therapist. I'm not sure how frequent. I spent more time at the gym. I spent more time in my practice. I spent more time just doing what I needed to do. Now, and don't forget, I lived in Florida. So where do I go? I go to the water. So
mhm.
I had that, I did a lot of writing and I did a lot of thinking, like, what am I going to do next? And plus, once I moved out of the house, now I was involved in all the legal piece of divorce.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward, that was September. And so by the following March, it was final, which was very difficult. Seeing the final papers, they really broke me. That was a lot.
Say
And
more about that, what that felt like.
no, I didn't expect to feel like that, but it's like when you read that first initial page, which says these people are being divorced because of unreconcilable differences, I'm like, hmm, but it was just like, then it was like, okay, this is my fault because that's not how I really felt about this divorce. And in reality, I don't think it was my fault, but I had somebody who enjoyed other women. So it was different. But anyway, so by that all happened, and that was March. And now I'm getting ready to figure out what's my next move. And I'm getting ready to really like work with my clients and let them know that I am going to be leaving. And so then I came up again for a shorter period of time in the summer to look around for a place to live up here, which I found. So now I'm between, rental up here, my condo down there. And so I was so busy. And until I pulled in on October 11th, 2011, and moved into my new condo here, I was just, I think, exhausted because that was quite just a year of constant. And still having people come up to me like, I can't believe you're getting divorced, but the whole thing. But yeah, so I was busy. But then once I settled in up here, I got a therapist pretty quick. And that was helpful.
Well, prior to that, I mean, what I'm hearing is that you were dealing with the logistics that kind of put the emotional part a bit in the background because you were doing all the practical things. And so now that's all behind you. So then you got a therapist. And but just to go back to the need for community, you had a community. You didn't need to go out and find one. I mean, this is, I always cultivate your friends. You never know when you're going to really need them because look, they were just there for you, Jackie.
Yep.
And also, you probably have friends like you who listen attentively, and some of those friendships and those conversations can be even more effective than a therapist because those people know you, and we need those people.
Yes, absolutely. And I have to say that going to therapy, and I say this to people often, when you're going to therapy after a trauma, which this is, it becomes difficult to relive the trauma. So now you're going to a new therapist and you're reliving the whole thing.
You got to retell the whole story all over again, Yeah.
Which, in theory, the more times we can tell a story, the more healing it is. And that's true. I mean, it does work.
In theory, you said.
In theory, but it does work. I mean, if you can tell your story enough times that it gets so far out there, so far removed from you, because now you've told it a million times and it's kind of like, as a matter of fact, just to interject here, people who have heard the Betrayal podcast said to me something about one person said, "Oh, was that horrible for you?" And I said, "No, not at all." I said, "I'm just here to help other people." And no, it's long done. But that's the thing, so even though you're re-traumatized, but now you're telling somebody, a therapist that's a stranger to you, right? I never met this man before. And they have different perspectives, which I thought was very helpful. Him just really understanding, because I went to a male, just so understanding of a man, right? And
was that deliberate to have a male therapist?
Yeah. Yes, I think it was, because I had been to female therapists before, and I just feel like sometimes, and especially with this, and I have to say, I mean, this doesn't say a lot for the therapeutic community, but there are good and there are bad out there. And I remember my biggest fear was that I was going to go to see a woman and she was just going to jump on the bandwagon of, oh, he was an infidel, that's horrible, and went down that whole road rather than helping me heal from that. So I felt like that's why I wanted to go. Plus, he was highly recommended by somebody I met when I first came here who had gone through a divorce. So it just felt like it fit, and it did fit. And I went to him for quite a while. And he was good, but he was good and he wasn't great in some ways, right? But you sort through that. You sort through it. It's like anything. You go to something, you take what you can from it, and you leave the rest.
Yeah. I mean, they're just people as well. And just like any profession, there's good ones, there's bad ones, there's in between. And I'd asked you prior to our recording, and you weren't sure how to answer that, but was there anything that he said to you that moved you or made you think, oh, I never thought of that? Or I mean, sometimes it could just be a really simple question or or a statement. Was there anything like that was kind of like a light bulb moment for you?
I think the real thing that happened was that I felt very understood. And I'm not sure anybody else, even my friends and stuff, I mean, they understood because they understood at a different level, but he really understood. And he was definitely somebody, and I can't think of anything very specific, but had me moving forward. I would leave there, even if I cried through the whole session, but I would leave there thinking, okay, I can do this. I can put one foot in front of the other. I know I can. I mean, everything around me now is new, including my therapist. And I just had that feeling after being there that I had the ability to do this. And I think that's really mostly there. I couldn't think of anything very specific because it's a long time ago. And not that as a therapist, I mean, I'm always looking for a therapist. I've gone through several. Um, because we do, right?
Yeah.
I do. And we all
Yeah.
agree. And I've had therapists as clients as well. So we get it. And it works. But then it gets to a point where it doesn't. And I never fault anybody for that. Not to say, I mean, I've had clients for years that just keep coming back, and it's okay. But I often suggest, is it time for you to see somebody different?
Hmm. Well, somebody different is always going to give you a different perspective. Is always going to, there's yeah, everybody's completely different. You're going to get hear an angle. Oh, never thought of that. I mean, I've been to lots of therapy too, and I remember one time a therapist asking me a question that I had never thought of before, and it completely changed my whole thinking process. So let's touch on denial. When we've experienced a betrayal, which I consider to be a traumatic event, to various degrees. But whether it's your marital partner, whether it's your friend, whether it's your family member, there's a denial piece in that. Does everybody go through
I
that?
don't know if everybody goes through that, but I really look at denial as more of a defense mechanism. We don't want to believe it. We don't want to believe that it's happening. And that really keeps us safe, so to speak, in our own world. It's very similar to compulsive lying, right? People who are compulsive liars eventually absolutely believe their lie. You would know it's a lie because you do, but they are now at the point where it is not a lie. This really happened. And that's really difficult to work with. But that's what compulsive lying is about until you tell yourself, again, it's like telling yourself anything over and over and over again until you rewire your brain and it believes it, right? It's like the positivity
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
routine that I talked about. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much like when you're in denial, that's really a defense mechanism. You're just afraid to look at it. It's hard to look at it square in the eyes, right? You don't want to. So your safety is denying that it happened. It's like we could go back to the betrayal of a marriage, right? Somebody finds out their husband's cheating. They don't want to believe it. So they're going to believe what they want to believe.
Mm-hmm.
He never really did that. He didn't really mean to. He's okay. Whatever we do, right? But then that's a part of the process as well. I mean, the sad process is when you get into pure domestic violence and they keep taking the person back until they're dead, which does happen. But, that's a whole
Mm-hmm.
nother level.
Did you find yourself in denial in the beginning? I mean, and denial in the way to say to yourself, this can't be happening. this has got to be a bad dream. I mean, I've been with this person for decades, and now this, like, tell me this isn't true. Did you go through that?
I mean, I was hoping that was the
Mm-hmm.
truth. But the thing is, along the way, sort of after I told you it's kind of a wonky timeline, but when I found out about some other things that were going on that I really didn't believe, and he, of course, denied, I wanted to believe him. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
Made my life easier. I liked what I was doing. I liked how my life was moving along. So I was like, all right, I don't believe you, which, probably if I was honest with myself, I didn't really believe him, but it's okay. I could deny that and move forward.
Yeah. Well, yeah, as you say, you want to believe the person because if you don't believe the person, then you've got to deal with that,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean,
right?
you have to understand when you get married or you have a close relationship with a friend, with a family member, with whoever. And basically, it comes down to this. It comes down to love and trust.
Trust. Yeah.
And once that trust is broken, that's where it all goes crazy, basically. I mean, then you don't know what to do. It's like this was a person I totally trusted with my life. And this is what happens.
Yeah. It's shattering,
Uh-huh.
and as we've said a few times, there's post-traumatic stress
Yep,
afterwards. It just shatters you to the core.
it does.
And some much more serious than others. Okay, something else I wanted to ask you.
Uh-huh.
A lot of times I did a lot of coaching, and I used to tell people, when you're moving forward or trying to make your life better by employing certain strategies or different ways of communication, you go one step forward and then two steps back. And then you'll go a little bit forward again and then two steps back. Did you find that with yourself while you were healing? And do you find that with other people who are healing after betrayal?
Yes. My answer is yes, because there were days that I felt like I was on top of the world. I could do anything. I'm going forward. I'm not looking back. And then all of a sudden, and this is where I talked about things like triggers and flashbacks and all that, it comes and you can't help it. And it's not something you predict. It's not something you have control over in a lot of ways. But when it comes and then you really just kind of wallow in it for a while, that's where you're really going backwards, right? And then you can push yourself to the next, what do I have to do now? And you start all over again. And then, again, you're driving down the street and there's a song on the radio. You're like, oh no.
Mm.
And, so but you become more aware, I think, of those triggers so that you can do something about it. Whereas
Mhm.
early on, I think we'll call it the recovery process, right? I think early on, you have more of a tendency to what I'm calling wallow in it, right? So if that music came on, that's my best example, you leave the song on for the whole time and you start singing with it because you're like, okay, and then you're crying with it. And then, so you're not making a change. You're just staying there. And I know that that does happen. But, yeah, that's where you go forward and then you go back and then you go forward and then you go back. And until your momentum is all forward.
Right, right. And that could, I mean, I guess that varies from
It
person to
can take
person.
years.
Years, yeah, yeah. Where there's times when you think, oh, I'm in the hole again. I feel like I have to start all over again. And yeah, gosh, life can be so challenging sometimes, Jackie.
Well, it can be really challenging, but it can also be really good. And I think, when you're in what I'll say, moving forward and the recovery of any trauma, betrayal, the thing is you have to stay in that mode the best that you can of learning who you are, who you want to be, what you need to change. How do you keep yourself emotionally fit, right? What do you need to do? And once you start to learn all those things about yourself, you can pretty much move forward for the majority of the time. I'm not going to tell you you're going to wake up, happy every single day of your life and you're going to find joy in everything. However, it's not that hard to do. I mean, even if you have a bad day where everything is going wrong, I don't know, you know, little things. And, you're in traffic or you get to work and you have like a million things on your desk and you're never going to finish it in the time. But, you can still look at it and go, okay, but I can do this. I
Mhm.
have the ability to do it. And I think that's where you have to sit.
Well, and I think in life, it's through the difficult times that we grow the most.
Well,
And
again, getting out of your comfort zone, which is forced in a betrayal situation, you're forced. This
mhm,
was my comfort. This is where I lived. This is what I did. And even earlier when I talked about, what your purpose was, like you had your purpose. You knew what you were doing. You had your schedule. This is what I did on this day. This is what I did on that day. My husband and I went out on a Friday night, Saturday, all the things. You have
mhm.
theater tickets, you have this, so everything is comfortable. And then it's gone. So you're forced into an uncomfortable situation, which enhances growth, no matter how hard it is.
It definitely does. I mean, I can say that for myself as well. And it certainly wasn't an overnight process, but it does take, a lot of inner dialogue, knowing, as you said in the beginning, knowing what to say to yourself, knowing what questions to ask yourself, knowing who to reach out to, and knowing that it's important to reach out to people, knowing that you need a community. And that doesn't come naturally to everybody. But if you do all those things, you will come out of the situation a more evolved person, I think. And most people will say that. I mean, when you hear people that are considered to be very successful and you hear their life story, they all went through something horrific,
Yeah, usually.
whether it be health, whether it be a marriage, whether it be, something to do, losing all their money or whatever. And then they got
Yes.
through it and to the point where they are now. And it seems like it's a necessary component to get to be your best self. It's
Well, a couple of things. There really is not any growth if you don't move out of your comfort zone in general, no matter what you're doing, right? And the other part that I really wanted to say about the betrayal piece, you have to get to a point, two things happen. At some level, you have acceptance, and then you have forgiveness. And forgiveness is a whole nother ballgame. And that's the hardest, I believe, to get to.
Were you able to do that?
I say yes loosely. I didn't have any trouble. For some reason, I really didn't. I didn't have any trouble forgiving my husband. I had a lot of trouble, and I'm still not sure I'm through it, forgiving the mistress who is now the
Mhm.
wife. I had I still struggle with that. I have to be honest. I struggle with that a lot. I don't think, and then I always hear my friends are like, well, she broke up your marriage. Why would you ever forgive her? And I'm
Mhm.
like, mm-hmm. But yeah, maybe because I don't know her. It's easier to forgive somebody I think that you know
Mhm.
than to somebody who's really harmed you in some way and you don't know them. So you're sort of like, well, why would they deserve forgiveness? But as we say, forgiveness is for ourselves because we don't want to walk around with anger. But again, I'm not saying we have to walk around with anger or forgiveness, right? It's not the opposite. I think once was said to me, forgiveness doesn't mean you condone any of the behavior.
Absolutely not. No, it doesn't suddenly mean what you did was right and what you did was okay, but I'm choosing not to hold on to the resentment and the anger. I need to move on. D- do you still feel like there's an open wound?
No.
No.
Uh-uh.
Okay, well that says that you've grown tremendously, moved.
No, there's not an open wound at all. I think what happens in moving forward, however, is you become more careful and you don't freely give out your trust. You sort of cautiously move forward, as far as relationships are concerned. I don't mean everything, but relationships, right? You have to be cautious because you trusted and now you're sort of not sure.
Yeah. We have to be cautious. I mean, I think whenever we're seeking a new partner, regardless of our background, we have to be cautious. Especially with online, there are many
Yes, there are.
scammers. Yeah, yeah, people that
Well,
initially seem really great, and oh no, you weren't so great after all.
right. And we know that from obviously my experience, we know that people can look great. They can present like the perfect person. And in fact, not true. I mean, it may take a long time to come out, but it does eventually. So,
Yeah. Yes. I've experienced it too many times. Oh, yeah. Okay, Jackie, what are some final thoughts around this? This is such an interesting topic, and I know that it's one that a lot of people can relate to.
I think sometimes you have to look at, yes, we went through betrayal, trauma, all of those things. But then you have to look at the person, okay, that betrayed you, and look at, do I really want to have a relationship with that type of person? And that's where we said about conversation and reconciliation and resolution. But the point is, you have to really dive deep and say, do I want to have a relationship with somebody who's done this? And that's your prerogative. So I think it's important to really look at what happened, how it happened, before you even jump into, okay, I really want to have a relationship with this person again. And that's, I think, very, very important. And then you kind of look at, what kind of people do I want to surround myself with? Who really lifts me up? Where do I feel positive in my life? What gives me joy? And all those things that we think about within the realm of positivity.
So true. Yeah. We quote Maya Angelou often, and when she says, when people show you who they are, believe them. And that's who they are. Yeah. Okay, Jackie, thank you so much for coming on again. This is I just love these conversations.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, it's an honor. Okay, so tell us again how people can reach you.
It's Jackie at JackieCadamsCounseling.com.
Okay. And counseling for Canadians is one L. We spell it with two L's. Counseling in the US is one L. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.